The Raiders' coaching search feels less like a process and more like a storm, with names flying in from every direction and each one carrying its own promise or threat. At first glance, some of these interviews looked reckless, even desperate, like a franchise throwing darts in the dark. But when you slow it down and actually connect the dots, the chaos starts to look intentional. The Raiders are not just looking for a coach. They are trying to reset their identity after years of instability, wasted talent, and constant restarts. Every interview, even the ones that shocked people, reflects a different version of what the Raiders could become, and that is why none of them are random. The one that made the most noise was the interview with Davis Webb, a 30-year-old quarterbacks coach from Denver with no head coaching experience, no coordinator title, and no public reputation as a mastermind. On the surface, it sounded like a joke, but the NFL is not built on surface-level thinking. It is built on relationships, trust, and what people see behind closed doors. John Spytek's connection to Denver is the key. He knows that building. He knows the culture there. He knows what kind of minds are really shaping the offense. Webb is not just a clipboard holder. He is in the ear of the quarterback every single snap, breaking down coverages, calming chaos, and translating complicated systems into something playable. He lives in the space between play call and execution, and that space is where games are won or lost. Webb also represents the future the NFL is chasing. Young, adaptable, and shaped by modern football. He has lived inside a system that struggled with complexity and timing, and that gives him insight into how to fix it. The league is obsessed with finding the next young offensive architect, someone who can build around a quarterback instead of forcing the quarterback to fit a rigid system. That is why his name matters. Not because he is proven, but because he is moldable. If he hits, the Raiders get stability for a decade. If he fails, they fail fast. That is the risk-reward math behind that interview. Then there is the defensive side of the conversation, and it all circles around one man, Maxx Crosby. Keeping him in silver and black is not optional. He is the identity of the defense, the heartbeat of the team, and the kind of player franchises are built around. That is where Vance Joseph comes in. His defenses are not passive. They attack. They hunt. They create chaos up front so edge rushers can breathe. Crosby does not want to be neutralized by double teams and chips. He wants freedom. Joseph's system gives him that. It creates one-on-one opportunities, forces offenses to pick their poison, and lets elite pass rushers become nightmares. Hiring Joseph would not just be a coaching move. It would be a message to Crosby that the Raiders are building around him, not just with him. But the Raiders are not just looking at emotion. They are gathering information. That is why names like Matt Nagy are in the mix. It is not about hiring him. It is about understanding the machine in Kansas City. What makes that offense work? How Andy Reid structures his game plans. How Spagnuolo builds his defenses. Every answer helps. Every insight becomes part of the blueprint. In a division ruled by the Chiefs, ignorance is a death sentence. Clint Kubiak is another name that sounds safe on paper. Pedigree, familiar systems, tight end-heavy looks that fit the Raiders' current roster. But the real question is power. How much of Seattle's success belongs to him, and how much belongs to Mike Macdonald's overall structure? The Raiders cannot afford to hire someone who is just executing someone else's vision. They need someone who owns it. Brian Flores brings brilliance and baggage. His defenses are ruthless. He creates pressure where none should exist. He turns average players into problems. But leadership matters as much as scheme. Flores has burned bridges before. He demands control. He trusts veterans more than youth. The Raiders are about to get younger, not older. Draft picks, cap space, and a roster in transition demand patience and teaching. That is not Flores' reputation. He is a weapon as a coordinator. As a head coach, he is a gamble that could either dominate or detonate. Cliff Kingsbury represents growth. He is no longer the air raid only coach he once was. He has learned balance. He has learned how to build a run game. He has shown he could develop quarterbacks. But offense alone cannot lead a franchise. The Raiders need a head coach who commands both sides of the ball, or at least knows how to hire someone who can. If Kingsbury comes, the defensive coordinator becomes just as important as the head coach himself. And then there is Jesse Minter. quiet, cerebral, built through years of grinding behind scenes. He represents structure, discipline, and long-term vision. He has learned from builders. He has watched programs rise because of culture, not chaos. His defenses do not rely on stars. They rely on execution. That matters for a team that cannot always buy talent, but must develop it. Minter is not flashy. He is functional. And sometimes function is exactly what a broken franchise needs. What ties all these names together is not style, age, or philosophy. It is the Raiders' desperation for continuity. They have paid too many coaches to leave. They have drafted players for systems that no longer exist. They have watched talent rot because there was no plan long enough to let it grow. Whoever they hire cannot be a 2-year experiment. He has to be a 10-year foundation. That is why even the shocking interviews make sense. The Raiders are not searching for comfort. They are searching for direction. They are weighing youth against experience, innovation against control, offense against defense, risk against safety. This is not chaos. This is reconstruction. The next coach will not just call plays. He will define what Raiders football looks like for the next decade. He will decide how Max Crosby is used, how the next quarterback is developed, how young players are taught, and whether this team finally stops chasing identity and starts owning one. That is why this search matters so much. Not because of who is interviewed, but because of what the Raiders choose to become when the interviews are over. Now it is your turn to weigh in. Which direction do you think the Raiders should go? Do they need a young offensive mind, a defensive enforcer, or a program builder who brings structure first? Who do you trust to finally give this franchise stability? Drop your thoughts below. Share this with another Raiders fan who lives and breathes this team. And if you want more deep, dramatic breakdowns of everything happening in the NFL, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay locked in because this story is just getting started.